We're now heading into our super session. For a better viewing experience during the super session, you may select the layout button, which can be found close to the top of the screen, which will be displayed as you hover close to your list of presenters. If the layout button does not automatically appear, please use your mouse and place your pointer close to the presenters and left click. This button will allow you to select how you would like for your presenters to be viewed on your screen. I also want to remind you that we will have a question and answer segment at the conclusion of the super session entitled The Future of Workforce. You're encouraged to type your questions in the Q&A box and choose the drop-down button to select all panelists, then hit send. As many questions as possible will be answered during the Q&A, which will be held at the end of the super session. There will also be a survey that you will receive at the close of the super session. Please, please give us your feedback. This is our way of knowing how well we've done and how we can improve and the things that you've enjoyed. So please take the time to complete the survey because your input is valuable. With that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Shanta Williams.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the super session. My name is Shanta Williams, and I'll be the facilitator for the discussion between a few of our Texas Workforce Commission executive leaders on the future of workforce. Over the next 60 minutes, our panelists will share an overview of how the workforce system has responded to the COVID-19 pandemic and how technology, new ways of performing work, and changing customer expectations have and will continue to change how we do business. We will have 45 minutes to discuss and 15 minutes for Q&A. So let me tell you about our panelists. Today we have Courtney Arbor, Division Director of the Workforce Development Division, where she oversees an integrated development system that provides oversight for employment and training activities with a focus on meeting the needs of employers and job seekers in Texas. As director, Courtney manages more than $500 million in workforce programs and initiatives, which are primarily administered by 28 local workforce development boards through 180 American Job Centers, 180 plus American Job Centers and satellite locations across the state. Hello, Courtney. Next, we have Cheryl Fuller, Division Director of the Vocational Rehabilitation Services Division, which also includes the former Blind Services Division. Cheryl oversees region. Somebody seems okay. Cheryl oversees region and field offices that deliver vocational rehabilitation services under VR Consumer Services, VR Program Operations, Chris Cole Rehabilitation Center, Business Enterprise of Texas, and Blind Services Program Management. She has over 30 years experience in federally funded programs that focus on helping Texans prepare for, obtain, and retain employment. Hello there, Cheryl.
Good afternoon.
And our final panelist is Mary York, who serves as Director of the Office of Employer Initiatives. In this position, Mary oversees engagement of employers, business organizations, and the economic development community in the ongoing development of customer-focused, market-driven workforce system. Prior to joining the TWC last September, Mary served as Deputy Director for the Governor's Economic Development and Tourism Office, marketing Texas as one of the world's premier business locations and travel destinations. So welcome so much. Such a well-rounded panel. Thank you everybody for being here. Understanding we only have an hour and knowing the attendees are ready to hear from you, let's dive right in. So my first question is in two parts, and I want to start with you, Courtney. Can you talk big picture about the labor market and some of the major changes we've seen in the economy and Texas workforce in recent years?
Yes, thank you, Shanta. And again, like Shanta said, we're so glad all of you are here. For years, we have been talking about adapting to technology changes, the way technology is improving productivity in industry and automating work, in some cases replacing certain jobs and making others available, and even using AI and new self-thinking technologies that are popping up. You all know this, that technologies change manufacturing, healthcare, real estate, even virtually every industry has been affected by changes in technology. And today we're going to cover a lot of ground. We'll talk a little bit about how technology is changing all of our lives, and how when we're working with stakeholders, either through education programs or workforce programs, how we can best support them. Recent news stories, I think Commissioner Alvarez mentioned this, that Tesla, Oracle, BlockCap Cryptocurrencies is another company that just moved to Austin, or is about to move to Austin. Great likes cheese. I'm not even as familiar with their technologies, but we know that technology will play a role here. And so we have workforce challenges and workforce opportunities as the landscape continues to change. We know that our customer base has to embrace lifelong learning, to be agile. Well, and we also, all of us, be agile, being ready to learn new skills, go after new skills. We have to be ready to teach new skills, dust off all of our college curricula, our own programming inside our workforce system, and look to see how we can encourage lifelong learning and new skill sets, including tech skill sets, which we'll talk a little bit about. You all know that job titles are changing, new skills and opportunities are needed, and all of us in this room, or virtual room, know that the public looks to us for information, and they look to us to lead that charge with our other workforce partners. One thing we have in common with industry, education, and virtually everyone else probably, is that people are at the core of our business. We have been and continue to support customers and job seekers in their education and work, but within our own walls even, we've been dealing with the level of change that industry has. We've adapted to keep things going virtually, providing tools to our staff, providing customer tools, meeting staff and customer needs, meeting them where they are, listening to them and adapting when something doesn't work. So we are today going to talk about a number of perspectives. Will Lutz and Nancy Moore will have a presentation in the morning about labor market changes during these uncertain and changing times. And I'm not going to spend time on labor market today because of that, but you all see some of the industries that are bouncing back more quickly. You're watching while others struggle. And as we as a system keep a close eye on that with the great data we have and the tools we're developing and have developed to do that, I think we are going to be well positioned to help people have a roadmap for what they do next, help employers to find the talent they're going to need. So Mary, before I hand off to you, one of the TWC LMCI, the Labor Market Career Information staff, said something to me that has really stuck with me. This is a common realization in their world, that commerce and industry move along at their own pace and we come behind and try to quantify it. And I was thinking as I heard that, wow, what a true statement. Commerce and industry over the last few years has been hit hard, rebounded, shifted, and it sure makes our work tricky to help prepare a workforce. But I'm glad that we're all in this together. But Mary, what would you add on some of the employer needs that seem to be most prevalent right now and any innovations you're seeing?
Yeah, thanks for that, Courtney. And kind of thanks for sharing that from LMCI, because it does make me think, whenever I think, well, first of all, I am proud to be a Texan, and I am proud to work for the Texas Workforce Commission and be part of the amazing things that come through our workforce system here in the state. Everyone is contributing in their own way to a somewhat complex problem, right? But one of the reasons I'm proud to be a Texan, one of many, is because Texans can respond like no other. You give us a challenge and we're on it. We'll take it. And I think Texas businesses, Texas employers are second to none in that regard. But, there are some ways that our agency specifically can help. And certainly we've heard from them that there are things that they're needing. Workers are needing technical leadership and workplace skills due to increased digital technologies and automation in the workplace. I think we were seeing some of that prior to the pandemic. All of these things were happening before the pandemic, but then it's like it hit the gas pedal. Everything we felt, all the pain points that, our state might experience, our nation experience, it was kind of put to the test where, things that weren't necessarily in the best shape to begin with, we felt the pressure, right? So in places where there may have been technical skills lacking, wow, we saw that come through in the pandemic. And then we're seeing it in kind of these workplace skills, we could call them soft skills. As an employer engagement group, we saw employers looking increasingly for that type of training before the pandemic, and now we see it even more. And I think, some of that is driven by that automation, because as we see different roles and different types of work beginning to be automated, there are things that can't be automated, and that's when those workplace skills are key. We've also seen an increase in retirement, and so, as people kind of took the pandemic to reevaluate their priorities, some folks just said, you know what, I've worked a really long time and now I'm going to rest, and they certainly deserve it. But those might have been some of our most experienced supervisors. And so we're needing supervisory management training, critical thinking training for the upcoming workforce. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing in terms of employer demand. And, kind of going back to that technical training aspect, it's interesting as technology advances, it's becoming more and more customized. So our employers are needing more and more customized training, more customized options. I had the pleasure of joining Commissioner Alvarez this last weekend in South Texas, all through the valley. We went to SpaceX, which was amazing to tour SpaceX. I got to walk underneath a rocket that is going to be shot up through our atmosphere. It's incredible that technology is coming out of Texas. It's great. But one of the places where we spent the most time was walking through where the rockets were actually being welded together. And, there are these big rings that get stacked on top of each other to make this huge rocket. And the welding that was taking place wasn't just, well, and I am not a welder, so I don't want to diminish the fact that any welding skill is impressive, but this was very customized. The quality that was necessary, as you can imagine, to deal with the type of pressure that is within a rocket is very important. So they need specific customized training. Even if they have a welder come in, they're having to really bring them up to their standard. So we're seeing that more and more. And not every company is SpaceX, but it is a common thing. So, as Texas continues to recover, we know that the unemployment rate is going to drop. And I would say that's a wonderful thing based on everything we've experienced in the last year, but it can make competition for talent even more difficult. Employers are going to have to think outside the box to recruit and retain workers. I think that that's going to be maybe looking at some ways to make working for them more enticing. And so with that, I want to hand it off to Cheryl. Oh, you're on mute, Cheryl. Think.
Of course I had to do that. So thank you, Mary. And that is a perfect segue to what I have been looking at and thinking about, and that is how the workforce is driving employer behavior and how those workforce changes are coming right alongside some of the trends that both you and Courtney have talked about. Again, COVID-19 has been an accelerator for trends. It hasn't really been an initiator. In some cases, it's been a magnifier, where trends that have been building some momentum over the last few years just became very, very clear to us. And there's so much research out there that can really inform our thinking. There are numerous groups that have been studying this so we can figure out how we need to adapt. And one of the resources I've looked at lately is a study conducted by Gartner, and it was featured in the most recent issue of Harvard Business Review. And Gartner interviewed 2,800 job candidates and about 3,500 hiring managers. And they identified 3 big shifts that are requiring employers to reconsider how they had traditionally recruited talent. And I thought those were very relevant to the workforce at large and what we do, but specifically to how that may open doors for individuals with disabilities, an often untapped pool of talent. The first one is evolution of skills, and you've both already talked about that, but the skills that are needed in many roles have a pretty short shelf life these days because technology is evolving so rapidly. And the study that I read talked about in IT and finance, and I think it was sales, positions that are filled today will need on the average of 10 new skills within 18 months. And in many cases, it's even difficult to discern what skills will be needed in the current workforce, much less the future, particularly given the increase in remote work. The second trend they talked about was the dispersion of skills and talent. So employers in the past, where they found talent is not necessarily where they will find it in the future. So because remote work has been normalized through the pandemic, the employers can source candidates from where the talent is, not from where they are. And they can look at what kind of talent they would like, not just what is available nearby. And that is a game changer for us as we think about preparing people to be the candidates that employers need, and particularly is a game changer for people with disabilities, which I'll get into in a moment. The third trend was really the candidate expectations that you mentioned. Candidates are increasingly selective about who they work for. And so the research is suggesting that employers have employment value propositions to convey to candidates and employees that talk about how they're going to be flexible, how they're going to enable autonomy, how they're going to create those deeper connections for the workforce so they just don't see their employees as workers, but as individuals. And bottom line, candidates are expecting to have some influence over the design of their jobs. And so even though those trends were well underway before COVID, man, with the move to remote work at such high levels, that has really magnified it. So this opens the door for people with disabilities because employers are going to be looking for talent wherever that talent is. They're increasingly focused on what they need to do to have a diverse workforce and to make sure their recruitment strategies don't leave talent unexplored. And we were already seeing this before the pandemic. There are employers who have implemented neurodiversity initiatives. That includes Microsoft, Dell, SAP, HP, where they have reconsidered how they interview and select so that neurodiverse candidates are not at a disadvantage because they may not interview well in traditional interviewing. This may include bringing them on for paid internships, and some of our customers have been able to do that. They are interviewed, they are selected for a paid internship, and that internship becomes their long-term interview process for ultimate hiring. It's a fantastic way to rethink hiring and recruiting to really ensure that the workforce is diverse. Also, Winco and Walgreens have reconsidered, as has HEB, how they are rethinking their programs and their hiring and recruitment to allow for on-the-job paid work experience and training prior to selection. So these trends that affect the workforce as a whole open the doors for people with disabilities, and we're really looking forward to making sure our customers have an opportunity to access those.
It's really good. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I think you all touched on, all three of you touched on something very important that my takeaway was employers are listening and they appear to be rising to the occasion, redefining services for customers and changing their business model to accommodate the employees. So Cheryl, let me start with you on the next question. What do we all need to be thinking about as we consider the future, a path forward, next steps, and then what are the expectations for our own system?
Well, I would say that customer expectations are changing, both the expectations that you and I and everyone listening have as customers. I know my expectations as a customer have certainly changed over the last few years and in fact over the last 12 months. And so customer expectations are changing on the whole in every industry of public industry or public programs as well as private sector programs. And we began to evaluate some of these trends in VR in 2019, and we developed an action plan to try to really rethink how we do what we do to adapt to some of these changes in customer expectations. And we were just getting implementation underway when COVID made its appearance. And so that required us to move immediately, as it did pretty much everybody listening, into remote work and remote service delivery. Out of that, we learned we could move a lot faster than we thought. It did, though, require heroic effort, which is not sustainable in the long term. So we have to take the lessons we learned about how quickly we could move and adapt to serve our customers and use that to make sure that we can evolve and adapt faster in the future than we have in the past. And this is critical if we're going to meet customer expectations, because when customers in the private sector are dissatisfied with their services or their products, they will go elsewhere. And I think sometimes in the public sector, we may not think customers can go somewhere else, but they can, and they do. And they disengage. They may find the services they need somewhere else, or they may choose to do without the services, which is unfortunate. So for us, it's a matter of being relevant. We have to be relevant to our customers, because if we're not relevant to our customers and meeting their expectations, we ultimately will not be relevant to our funders and our oversight authorities. And so what are those expectations? Well, as I said, they're pretty much what we have as customers. Coming out of the pandemic, more customers, including customers in different demographic groups. We often say, well, older customers may prefer in person. That's not true all the time. Rural customers may prefer in person. That's not true all the time. So it's really about many customers expecting digital solutions, remote options, and low contact or no contact, so low touch service delivery options. And it won't be something that is for all, but there will be enough customers that have that expectation that we as a system have to figure out how to do both. Other trends in customer expectations prior to the pandemic were customers expect low effort, and that doesn't mean they don't want to engage and participate in their services. It does mean they don't want your services to be hard for them. It shouldn't be difficult or a struggle for them to work with us. They expect services to be personalized. I think Mary said customized. That is a strong customer expectation. They expect us to be responsive and provide timely services. And customers increasingly expect transparency. When I order something off of Amazon, I can track it from the time I order it to the time they take a picture of it at my front door. And while that may not be something we can achieve in terms of taking a picture at the point of service delivery, we really have to think about making our service delivery process more transparent and less opaque. And customers expect us to be experts. If they contact us, they expect us to know what we're talking about and be able to serve them. And we have heard these themes from our VR customers in our recent needs assessment. So we really are focused on how we evolve and change our system so that we can work in the future to provide quality options to our customers, whether they are remote or virtually or in person, and really adapting our systems and processes to meet those expectations. It's a huge lift, but we are excited about it and working hard at it.
Courtney, you want to jump in?
Yeah, Cheryl, those are interesting thoughts. The way I look at this question is more from the perspective of how we also inform our board customers and VR customers of things that we haven't maybe told them in the past. Our world is changing, and I mean, through this pandemic, that was funny the way you said that, till it showed up, right? Or made its way on the scene. People just need different types of information than, probably in addition to the information we were always providing. I think what I was really proud about is to watch the boards and VR adapt over the last few months and make sure that people knew as much as we know. Like, using social media to say, we're open, come in and we'll help. And even in times of uncertainty, we are trying to keep our customers first. Well, what I've thought about over the last year or so as we've really kind of dug into this future of work thing is that we have to keep looking at what it is we're providing by way of information on our websites, in our orientations, in our workshops, on our own website, and make sure that what we're giving the public is relevant to them right now, and dust things off. And and make sure it captures what we need. I know we talked a lot during the pandemic about customers really needed help, maybe budgeting, or they needed referrals to community organizations that help pay for counseling or other things. I mean, it's just, as times change, our customers have very different needs, and we won't ever meet all of them, but we have to be sure that we're listening to them and trying to be responsive. I think it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversation over the last few months. Adam and I, some of the EDs have said this, Ed has said it. We do a lot of hands-on solutioning for people. We pay for training in WIOA to some degree. Our grantees train adult ed customers in apprenticeship. And so there's a lot of that hands-on learning happening that we are responsible for. But I think we're equally, or maybe even more importantly, providing other critical information and services that if we're not providing it, there can be a gap, because we're the workforce system. We have labor market information. We know about trends. We know what is going well in our area or not. And so boards do a great job, I think, of resume and interviewing and workshops and adjusting those as they need to, helping, I mean, even the employment plan development helps to create a path. And in times like this and going forward, I think we need to think about that path has a lot more turns on it now. People are no longer in a career for their whole life. The same career. There's ladders and rungs on lattices. And so making sure that people have resources for finding student aid, education for, what do they need to be educated in new industries that provide them a living wage or a better wage, a good solid job. What can we do to help them understand ways they can pull their family out of poverty? And often it comes down to these short-term trainings, using your transferable skill to move to another position, or short-term training that may not cost much at all, and you can often message it in a way that lets the employer know. So I think making sure that we're messaging to customers in a way that help them help themselves is also really valuable. I think most people that are listening today know that TWC partnered with Metrics for online courses. There are almost 70,000 people registered. And why did we do that? We did it because during the pandemic, we knew a lot of people wouldn't go back to work for a long time. We also know that in our changing workforce, not just because of the pandemic, but just in general, people need to keep upskilling. The term lifelong learning is something we really do all have to embrace. And so we're pleased to see so many Texans taking advantage of that, continuing to pump those messages and to keep ourselves learning new skills and getting educated even ourselves so that we can be better, help others, I know is something that I've been focused on even in our division. Let's see if I missed anything on mine. I really think that what we know to be true is that this workforce, kind of like we've known for many years, that we have more generations in the workforce now than ever before, right? Well, now we've got more technology and maybe faster changing technology in some industries than we've seen before. And we have a pandemic that has shifted what people manufacture, how they provide food to you when you show up at the restaurant, how they handle package deliveries. And so the more we can help our customers understand the changing needs of employers and the shifts in industries over time, I think will be a real strong value for us. And Mary, I am sure you have some brilliant thoughts here on employers and what you're seeing in this also.
Brilliant is like a high bar. Thanks for that, Courtney. But yeah, I mean, I think you both raised excellent points, and certainly, again, any of those pain points that we had prior to the pandemic, like in some cases, that technology gap was accelerated. And, I was excited to see broadband as a focus for the legislative session, that the governor made that a priority. Because this last year has certainly taught us about the need for that technology to be accessible. And, we talk about alignment in the workforce system. And you can't have alignment unless K through 12 is really involved as well. And that means they need access to technology, and they need not just access, but they need to really understand it. I think I've shared with at least one of you, my kids in second grade were learning how to use Google Docs and make basically a PowerPoint presentation. And so, they were getting that, as early as second grade, and prior to that had still been using computers off and on, but, they have their own Gmail accounts early on, so they can start becoming engaged with that technology. From our perspective, we see it through our program, our Jobs and Education for Texans program, and an increased focus on CTE. With each progressive year, we're seeing more and more interest in these school districts developing CTE programs or enhancing CTE programs that can provide an alternative career path beyond just what you could find in a four-year institution. So, and that could be anything from a production occupation like welding to healthcare to, a business and financial services. So, it kind of runs the gamut in terms of what really falls within that CTE world. And we're increasingly seeing businesses and economic development organizations involved, sitting at the table as ISDs and community colleges are working through what those programs look like. Because it's all well and good for a school to say, let's do this thing. But what they're doing really needs to align with what businesses are going to need as we move forward. Again, this last weekend, I had the opportunity to visit and see Raymondville ISD, something that they had done with a dual credit skills development fund award, and see some of the equipment that they're putting to use to train CNAs and develop a pipeline for LVNs and RNs, which are high demand occupations around the state. And it was exciting. It was exciting to talk to the students and see that they had a passion for healthcare, for really taking care of patients, and knowing that that's going to be a great career for them moving forward. And I should say, technology played a big role in that, because they were using amazing technology, these lifelike mannequins, or these full tables where you could kind of peel back the different parts of the body and understand the different body parts. It was amazing. So, great things coming out of our schools, and through that integration of technology, I think it's just going to get better.
Good, Mary. Thank you so much. Technology is certainly dominating the workforce, forcing us all to learn and grow at a rapid pace. So sounds to me like we're all moving in that direction. So I have one final question as we wind down on the panelist conversation before moving into Q&A. We talked about how the pandemic changed our system and what it meant for us. Now let's talk specifics on the future of our workforce system post-pandemic. So let's start with you, Courtney, and then we'll move into allow Mary and Cheryl to answer as well. How do we continue to innovate while taking the lessons learned over the last year and create a business model that works for us all? And if you could provide specific examples, that would be very helpful.
Well, Shanta, this is probably the easiest one, because our workforce boards and adult education leaders did so much of this over the last few months out of necessity, but it's easy to come up with some good examples. More than one board made their internet available, knowing that people didn't have internet. And so people could come in the parking lot and do their schoolwork, look for work, whatever they needed to do. We also saw in the adult ed grantees population that some students just were not able to, they didn't have the tools at home they needed. So some grantees checked out laptops when you weren't able to order and get things in, or the family just didn't have it, checking out Wi-Fi hotspots. We've seen things happen out of necessity this last year that I think we're all thinking that was really good. In a normal situation, we can really expand services if we will continue to think this way, because while it may not be making the news all the time that people don't have access, they're there. And there may be some other story taking the news headlines, that there are always those people that can benefit from anything we can provide that's a little out of the norm, if we can afford it, if it's a good use of the dollars. And so I've been interested to see how those things have worked. I know in Borderplex, I believe it was Borderplex, they had a van with a couple of seats. Wi-Fi would bring it around in the neighborhood to let people use the technology there. All of the boards adjusted to virtual hiring events and online, in one way or another, online welcoming of customers through orientations, workshops, one-on-one appointments. And they've been good about sharing what works with each other. And our commissioners talk with the board's EDs a lot, and we talk with them a lot. So they're able to tell us what seems to be working well. And I think that most of us in the system want to keep doing those things. If a hybrid approach works better, if virtual works better, if in-person works better, so be it, as long as we're all listening to the customer and we're listening to our neighborhoods to see what works best for them. Some neighborhoods always need the hotspot there, or regularly need someone to make themselves available through the library, through a mobile unit, through a van. And so from the workforce center perspective, and then on the adult education side, I can't remember what percentage. I think every one of our adult ed providers is now providing at least hybrid courses where a portion of it is virtual. If that works and it's cost effective and you can get more people in the room virtually, then let's keep doing it. Let's find out who does it well. And adult ed is like the workforce boards. They're very good about sharing with each other what is working well. So I think the main thing I would say, and I see it, you see it, is that we listen. We listen to what the customers are telling us. They're quick to tell us when something isn't going well, and we need to pay close attention. If it's happening very often, we need to switch things up. Or even if it's not, we need to find ways to serve the 1 or the 50 in new ways. So I know that our leadership is going to be supportive of virtual service delivery going forward, regardless of we staff are in the building or not, that whatever way is best to get to our job seekers, our employers, that we're supportive and happy to have made the transition and hope that we keep all of that up. I think I'm going to need to hand off to Mary at this point.
Yeah. Yep. That's right, Mary.
It's going to build off of what you said, Courtney, and I will add, I have heard at least one board that developed a social media team that would go out and train individual businesses on social media and how they could use that, because that became, it was important before, but it became increasingly important. And I think that might have been Borderplex as well. So, we're seeing lots of innovation from the board partners, Facebook Live events. It's exciting to see how we rise to the challenge, right? And employers did. We already talked about curbside, to go, all of that. I think even the chairman brought that up in his remarks. Manufacturers changed kind of how they were working. They implemented screening and health protocols, spaced people out, implemented new shifts in some cases, and then also kind of many of them plugged into TWC for the COVID-19 Skills Development Fund training, so their staff could be trained on the special challenges they were facing. And then, Courtney, as you mentioned, we saw this increase in virtual training, which I think before it was kind of like, oh, no, these things need to happen in person in order to be effective. And guess what? No, they were incredibly effective, or infective. Virtually, or, they changed the way the training was done so people could be spaced out and still get the hands-on instruction. We've even seen virtual reality, goggles where people are learning welding via VR, different kind of VR. And so it's pretty cool to see how things are changing in that regard. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I think we're just going to see an increased need for more customized training and meeting employers where they are. And what's going to be critical to that is the speed to deploy training. So something, I think occasionally we'll get a bad rap for it taking too long through kind of a review process, an award process, and everyone is very cognizant of that and working on ways to streamline the processes. So, by the time a training request is approved, the need hasn't changed. We want to make sure that we're addressing the needs as they occur, or, if we can, preemptively determine what those are and prepare in advance. And then, as Courtney has said earlier, lifelong learning, I think, is going to be critical as that future of work is evolving. So is the training that's going to be needed. So it's constantly going to need to be refreshed. And, I think we even see higher education kind of plugging into that with the idea of offering things like micro-credentials. It could be that you're earning micro-credentials on your way to a degree, or it could be that you've already received a certification or a degree and you're going back and getting those kind of refreshers. So, I think lots of different things there. I know we're running out of time, and I'm sure Cheryl's about to go, hey, it's my turn. But I want to touch on the idea that with these IKEA funds that we were fortunate enough to receive through a donation, we've also been looking at what the future for the restaurant industry and the retail industry looks like, and how we can offer some training to meet those industry needs moving forward. So there's a lot more to share on that, and a lot that I'm looking forward to in terms of helping, folks find jobs in retail and restaurant, and also helping those small businesses survive as we move forward. So with that, I think it is time for me to turn it over to Cheryl.
Well, thank you, Mary. And what I thought I would offer on this last question is really focusing on the VR service delivery system, which is a large direct service delivery system. How are we preparing? Because I know that some of the things that we're preparing for are the same as the board partners, as childcare, as adult education. We're all kind of sharing these same challenges and opportunities. And we're having to operate very much in the present, right? Focus on operating in the present while we plan for and move toward the future at the same time. And that's certainly something that we have been focusing on. How do we first manage this transition, the next transition? I mean, we had to manage a transition into remote work and remote service delivery very quickly. Now, how do we thoughtfully manage a transition back into whatever is the next normal? And most of the research, as well as most of what we're seeing in our customers and our staff, is what Courtney said a moment ago. It's likely to be some kind of a hybrid model. It has to work for our customers and our staff. So that is the challenge. How do we manage that transition to that next normal? And how do we retain what we have learned and what has worked about remote service delivery? And there have been some things that have worked very well indeed. And I can give just a few examples. The use of Teams. And I need to give a shout out to our IT department, who was training executive staff in late 2019 about this thing called Teams and Planner and Power BI and these new tools. And I thought, well, won't this be nice every once in a while? I might use that. A few months later, I was spending 10 hours a day on Teams, right? But Teams is so much more than just the ability to work and have a video meeting. You can use Planner, and some of our teams all over the state are using the Planner function in Teams to establish electronic work in process boards for themselves and their teammates where they can work together And we're talking about staff that in some instances are spread across multiple physical locations. That wasn't something they could do pre-pandemic. Just the ability to use Teams or technology platforms to have chat rooms to sort of replace that whole water cooler idea, right? Just to have a chat. And we heard a manager, VR manager from one of our units in Austin last week say the team loves that because they can communicate together and get to know each other, even in that environment, across multiple physical locations where they might not have interacted and shared tips before because they weren't in the same building. We have learned, that for our customers, we can do curbside. And there's no reason to stop that if it works for our customers, to still offer that as a service delivery option. We've learned that we can take a customer from hello through you have a signed plan of services without having to have them come in the office. So we want to figure out how we keep that and use that as we move forward. We have been able to engage communities of practice from all over the state. Before, we thought we all had to trek into Austin or Dallas or somewhere else. Well, now we have a supervisor community of practice that meets regularly and works through challenges together and gets training together. And they're all over the state, and yet they come together in one place on teams. And so there's some real power in what we have learned that we want to retain and be really thoughtful about what this hybrid model looks like. When we have this combination of teleworkers and in office, where we have a combination of remote or virtual service delivery and in-person. How does that work well so that we create a good, strong culture, not a bifurcated culture? And how do we use that technology to help us be more efficient for ourselves and our customers? So those are some of the things that we are working on. And one of the articles I read this weekend said it would just be a shame if when we adopt hybrid models, we go back to the office and in our in-office days, we sit in front of the computer all day long or sit in meetings all day long. The things that we can do when we are working remotely. But how do we really maximize in-office time for team collaboration, which is what is harder to mimic in a remote environment? Lastly, I would just say we've got to build our skills. The environment around us is changing, like you guys have talked about. Our work is changing. So how do we make sure our staff are skilled to engage with each other, either remotely using technology or in person? How do we make sure we're skilled to serve our customers? We started doing online transition fairs for students using the Easy Virtual platform that some of the boards are using for their hiring events. That was a skill set we had to develop. We need to continue to develop that while we also think about how do we have the skills necessary to do in person. And then just building the capacity in our staff to continue to use the rapid process improvement tools, other Lean Sigma tools, Lean Six Sigma, to transform our service delivery processes so we can do a great job of meeting our customer expectations. And I think the last thing I would say, and this has been particularly challenging for us to think about, is that in this new environment, really prior to it, but what has been magnified during COVID, is we have to rethink how we manage productivity. It was really easy pre-pandemic to see if your body was in your seat, I assumed you were productive. Well, that wasn't true then, and it's not true now. So as managers, when your staff are distributed or some combination of in-office and remote, we have to rethink how we manage productivity so that it is focused on the results and the outcomes and the timeliness, but not micromanaging staff in such a way where it conveys lack of trust or lack of autonomy, because then, you will have a challenge retaining your skilled and your talented staff. So really rethinking that and being deliberate about how we manage productivity going forward is something that we are beginning to work on now. Shanta, I bet you can wrap it up for us.
Yes, of course I can. Such great ideas and information to really think about, especially being productive in a virtual environment, how to measure productivity and how to communicate more and upskilling to be prepared for work in a virtual environment for the future as we continue, because it seems like this is where we're going. Makes sense to me. As we talk this through, I'm thinking about ES staff and workforce offices, or just workforce staff overall. They have to not only learn how to work in a virtual environment, also prepare their own skills and upskill so they can help employers and customers who need to work in a virtual environment. So it's probably a good idea if they start, learning. Probably most of them are, because of what we've seen so far, what the boards have done. They've done a really good job with transitioning from in-person to virtual, and hopefully we can keep that going. So thank y'all so much. Let me see if we have any questions. I don't think so. I think that y'all handled it pretty well. Talked a lot about, y'all covered a wide spectrum of information. I don't see any questions right now, so I think that we are, nope, no questions. So
Come on, I feel like this is their chance to like stump us with a question. I've thrown the gauntlet down now, but
if you need a question, Mary, I mean, I could come up with a few questions. But I wouldn't want to do that to you to keep you longer than what we need. So
You can give them to Mary. We're good. Yes.
yeah, for sure. Between Cheryl talking about our Amazon packages, tracking it from beginning to end, and Chair Daniel talking about his gratitude for what did he say? Margarita's on the go. I think we've got it handled pretty well. So thank you so much for doing this. I know that the community and our workforce partners and the system overall always loves to hear from you all. You all provide an insight that some of us or our partners may not get to hear. So this was a great opportunity to share what we're doing, what we plan to do, and to talk a little bit more about big picture and what's to come. So thank you for that. With that being said, I'll go ahead and wrap up. At the end, there is a survey. We are finishing a little early, but there's a survey that we want everybody to take prior to ending the session overall. I want to thank all of the speakers that we had today. I thought all of the information that was shared was certainly informative and a good time to hear from our leadership as we move forward to the future of workforce. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
And I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier. The information we shared on the future of work is obviously informed by our experiences and the people we interact with and our teams. But really the workforce boards and the work that they do as the boots on the ground, that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where we're going to really be able to track and understand how the future of work is changing in Texas, and in some ways it's going to change regionally even within the state. So I know that all of our board partners have open communication with us all the time, but as they're seeing things and changes that they think need to impact the services that we offer through TWC or through those local offices, I just want to continue to encourage them to share those with us, because that's really how we prove to be responsive and adapt as we need to adapt. So
That's really good. That's really good. Anything from you, Cheryl or Courtney, on closing?
Nothing for me. I just look forward to the opportunity to work across my colleagues within the Workforce Commission and also with the boards as we in VR work toward transforming our processes and our systems to meet the challenge of today and tomorrow. And I think it really will take all of us working together as a system to do that. But I think we have all of the expertise and the tools in the system to get it done.
Good. Thank you, Cheryl. Courtney?
I can add one thing quickly. I love about the workforce system and I know it's with all that we've been dealing with and just all of the different challenges faced, we can see it from so many different perspectives. Employees to their worker, training needs, us to our employees, us to our partners, boards and other grantees, boards to their customers, boards to employers, job seekers. We get to see it through so many different lenses that I think we certainly have opportunities in situations like this, but we actually get to see so many different viewpoints of the public from the workforce perspective that we are so well positioned to be an answer in times when people need it and when things are shifting. And we've got such great partnerships with our tri-agency partners, coordinating board and TEA and TWC are great partners. So I don't know, our reach is broad, and I appreciate that every day, honestly, and I'm sure all of you do also, the work we do, and that it really is broad, and we have a lot of good that can be done. So
Thank you, Courtney. That is so true. Our reach is very broad. There's a comment from someone in Q&A that says that this was a wonderful panel. Thank you, ladies, so much. So we got a few comments just like that. So I just wanted to share those before we go. So again, thank you. I'm not going to keep you any longer. Everybody, don't forget about the survey. And Courtney, Cheryl, and Mary, I will talk to y'all, tomorrow?
if not today, yes.
Not today. Thank you, ladies. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Everybody enjoyed the conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, this half-day forum opener has been awesome. Don't miss tomorrow's virtual breakout sessions. We have some great speakers with relevant and useful content to share. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at 8:30 in the morning. Have a good evening.